If you've ever played one of the Kanto Pokémon games, you're probably familiar with a character known as Mr. Fuji, a kind old man who looks after orphaned or otherwise abandoned Pokémon, as well as tending to the Pokémon Tower in Lavender Town. Mr. Fuji serves as a stark contrast to the otherwise eerie nature of the town in which he resides, one which has spawned many a creepypasta, for better or for worse.
But what if I told you that this kindly old man has a deep dark past behind him?
While nothing is outright stated, there is actually quite a bit of circumstantial evidence that paints a really unsettling history for this sweet, gentle old man. So to start off with, we'll dig a bit deeper into Fuji's relation with One Cinnabar Island. It's well established that he used to live here by 3 pieces of evidence. A portrait in the Cinnabar lab stating its founder as Dr. Fuji, a photo of Blaine and Fuji found in the former's gym in the Gen 3 remakes of the game, and lastly we have Blaine, who, as this photo establishes, is an old friend of our Senor Fuji, saying in the Let's Go remakes that the Pokémon Mansions holds remnants of an old friend's research. Not only does this evidence suggest that Fujirojin once lived on Cinnabar Island, but it also offers us insight into what he was doing prior to moving to Lavender Town. Going back to the first piece of evidence, isn't it interesting how Mr. Fuji was once referred to as Dr. Fuji? If I went through all the trouble of getting a PhD in something, I'm pretty sure I'd prefer to go by Dr. Taikyokutsu. So this leaves us with the question, why does Dr. Fuji now go by the moniker Mr. Fuji? Secondly, Dr. Fuji evidently was the one who founded the Cinnabar Laboratory, which strongly suggests he has a history in scientific research. Okay, so we've done enough stalking to find out there's more to Sir Fuji than meets the eye. But where does the dark side of this history come in? That, my dear viewer, comes in when we take a look at the Pokémon Mansion. As Blaine's testimony stated, the Pokémon Mansion is home to an old friend's research. And of course, what else could this be in reference to other than the journal entries found all throughout this abandoned structure? The journal entries detailing a team of researchers, or potentially just one researcher if the Bulbapedia statement on the Japanese version of the text is to be believed, performing experiments on Mew, leading to the creation of Mewtwo. Many would find the concept of gene splicing and cloning to be ethically questionable on its own, but even if you don't find such concepts repugnant on their face, further insight into the abhorrent ethics of this experimenting can be found documented in the Pokédex. While many of Mewtwo's dex entries are fairly typical, at least as far as Pokédex entries are concerned, there are several which paint a very dark picture of the kinds of experimenting that made this Pokémon what it is. The data entries in Red, Blue, Leaf Green, and X all state that Mewtwo was created after years of horrific gene splicing experiments. FireRed states that its genetic code was repeatedly recombined for research, causing it to turn vicious. And multiple dex entries document just how vicious this Pokémon is as a result. But if you're not convinced of the Pokédex's accounts of these experiments, we can take a further look at the various journal entries found in the mansion itself. The first 3 are fairly mundane reports about the discovery of Mew, and one about Mew giving birth, which was removed in the Let's Go version, so I guess this might be a retcon? Anywho, we have 3 run-of-the-mill reports of how this researcher, or this team of researchers, whatever, discovered and named Mew, but once we get to the 4th entry, things get kind of strange. Mewtwo is far too powerful. We have failed to curb its vicious tendencies. Now I ask of you, if Mewtwo is a clone of Mew, whom Mew may or may not have given birth to, why would he have these vicious tendencies documented in this journal entry? You mean to tell me that a clone of this wonderful little ball of joy would turn out to be so vicious? The way I see it, there's only 2 viable explanations, one being that Mewtwo had its genes edited specifically to be vicious, as some of its dex entries indicate, or Mewtwo was subject to cruel and inhumane experiments, causing it to grow vicious. The former of which is unethical, and the latter of which is extremely unethical. But the story doesn't end in Kanto. To further demonstrate my case, we'll have to take a look at Generation 3 and Guyana. In the first journal entry, it's mentioned that Mew is found in a jungle in Guyana. This, like the part about Mew giving birth, was taken out in the Let's Go versions, likely due to the regions after Gen 4 all being renamed locations rather than simply being given the names of their real-life equivalents. Maybe one day we'll get a region based on Guyana, and future remakes of the Kanto games will make mention of that instead. In any case, this brings us to a faraway place, aka Faraway Island, an event location exclusive to Pokémon Emerald in which the player can find the elusive Mew. Now, it's not outright stated, but it is heavily implied that this little island is situated somewhere in the Pokémon world's equivalent to the Essequibo River. This is substantiated by a close look at the old sea map, which depicts landmasses to the northwest and southeast of the island's location. Something which, for a Guyanese or whatever they eventually decide to name the Pokémon equivalent region, only makes sense if it's located around one of the country's two major rivers. On top of that, a clear facsimile of the river can be found in the background of one of Mew's scenes in the first Pokémon movie. But what does all of this have to do with Dr. Fuji's dark past? Well, quite a bit actually. Not only does the map locating this position strongly resemble the Essequibo River, an area which is very clearly surrounded by a jungle, not only is such a location described within the journals pertaining to where Mew is found, not only do you find Mew in this specific location, which as we've established was located in a Guyanese jungle, specifically around an area that is clearly based on the Essequibo River, but most importantly, this is where we find a very strange message left behind by someone who had previously discovered it. The message is faded, but appears to say something along the lines of, if any human sets foot here again, let it be a kind-hearted person. With that hope, I depart. What a bizarrely desultory message. May only a kind-hearted person step foot onto this island again? Why would someone write such a thing? Unless, of course, they knew of a time when a not-so-kind-hearted person had stepped foot into this Guyanese jungle. But we're not done yet. While it's absent for some reason in the English version, in the Japanese version a faded signature of the person who wrote this can be found, which is depicted in this concept art of the message. At the bottom right, we can clearly see the katakana for the sound G. There's clearly nothing after it, but given how the part of the message before it is worn, there could very easily have come at least one katakana before it. The most likely candidate being Fu. That's right, this message was written by none other than Mr. Fuji himself. Prior to becoming the sweet old man we know today, Mr. Fuji worked as a scientist who performed a series of ethically questionable at best experiments to clone Mew. And in doing so, he created Mewtwo. But at some point the guilt of what he was doing finally caught up to him, so he returned Mew to its rightful location, wrote his last message on the matter, and moved to Lavender Town, where he dedicated the rest of his days to looking after abandoned Pokémon as penance for what he had done. Can I just gush about how much I absolutely adore this setup? Not only is the twist regarding Mr. Fuji's history absolutely mind-blowing, but I freaking love how well it's conveyed. At no point is it ever a relevant plot point. Mr. Fuji never says anything about trying to make amends for past wrongs. Everything about this backstory is conveyed through little hints laid here and there that culminate thoroughly to the point where they can't be mere coincidences. We rarely, if ever, get this kind of subtlety regarding the backstory of a character, let alone in a game as seemingly simplistic as Pokémon. Mr. Fuji may very well have the most fascinating backstory of any character in all of Pokémon, not because it's particularly unique or exciting, but owing purely to the fact that it's never outright stated or implied, merely hinted at. And the best part is how dedicated Game Freak appears to be at maintaining this bit of unspoken history. They could have forgotten all about it after Gen 1, but they went out of their way to include hints in not only Gen 3, but even kept the spirit of the backstory alive and well in the Gen 7 remakes with Blaine's seemingly innocuous comment. It just amazes me how such a massive backstory of a character can be conveyed through nothing but little hints and nudges in the right direction. It's the kind of thing you'd never notice unless you were really paying attention. until Pokemon Origins came out and made sure to spell the whole thing out for the viewer.
Thanks for ruining my video, jerks!
Thanks for watching, and until next time, see ya!